All right, welcome guys. Today we're going to be doing a little video here in Ayutthaya, and we're going to go and we're going to check out some of the foreign settlements that were established in this city. Ayutthaya was the former capital of Thailand, and they really believed in trading with the outside world. First the Portuguese came, and then other Western countries came, as well as other Asian countries, and they established villages. Some of them integrated, like the Chinese integrated into Ayutthaya itself. They were allowed to settle inside of the city. Others, the kings of the Ayutthaya kingdom, wouldn't allow them to establish settlements inside the city, so they built settlements outside. So we're right here in front of the Japanese settlement, and we're going to try to check out the Portuguese settlement and see what remains of like the Dutch and the English, and see if we can see any of the remains of the French. So let me show you around and let's see what we see. So when Ayutthaya was sacked by the Burmese in like 1767, I believe, the settlements were all destroyed, along with the vast majority of the city of Ayutthaya itself. Some of it, the countries have went back in and refurbished it. Others, the Thai government has done a little bit, and some has just gone to the sands of time. So this is what the Japanese have done here. Now, to get in here, you have to pay 50 baht. So it doesn't matter if you're Thai or if you're non-Thai, it's 50 baht to come in. And from what I read, there's not a whole lot here, but they do have some information plaques and some movies and stuff like that. So hopefully something interesting is in here, so let's look. All right, so here's a little plaque talking about a lot of the Japanese came over, and at one point there were 800 to 3,000 Japanese reportedly living in this area. And then about 8,000 total in the Japanese settlement. There was Thais, Chinese, Vietnamese, and some of the employees. And a lot of these Japanese would come over here, especially some former samurais, after some of the internal strife in Japan itself. And they came over here and they basically worked as mercenaries. And they were pretty famous and well respected with the Ayutthaya kingdoms, or the Ayutthaya kings. Kind of nice. They've done like the little archways things you see like in Kyoto and other places in Japan, and then they have a little Japanese garden and an activity area, and then over there is the pier, which was the most important part of when this was actually a settlement. They would do the trading along the Chao Phraya River. Now this was all abandoned, and the Japanese fled when the Burmese captured this area. But they did some research through some of the historical documents, and they located the original area here, and then they acquired 7.5 acres or 7.5 rai of land. I'm not sure what this here says. It's all in Thai. Looks like some old pictures of the Japanese settlement. But 7.5 acres is roughly about maybe like 3.5, or 7.5 rai is about 3.5 acres. So it's a pretty small site, considering, you know, at one time there were, you know, 3,000 plus people living in this area. And here's the inside of the little Japanese garden. And they have a little bench and some shade and stuff to sit on. And it's kind of cool. They got it surrounded with some bamboo, and then some actual living growing bamboo. And then right over here is the Chao Phraya River. And across the way is the Portuguese settlement, which was the biggest and the most influential in Ayutthaya. The Portuguese were the first here, so they kind of had the ear of the king. Looks like the trees are shedded off a lot of leaves, so in need of some raking. And here we got a big barge going by on the Chao Phraya. So it looks like it's loaded down with something. You'll see these going the other way when they're empty, and it's sitting way up high in the water. But that was the whole reason for all of these settlements, is they did all the trade on the river, and it led directly into the sea. kind of hard to imagine that this was an international harbor here at one time. So we got a statue of one of the Japanese guys. So this is a little statue dedicated to Yamada Namagasha. He was one of the most important Japanese to be in this area. He was born in Japan in Sugiura province in modern-day Shikazuka prefecture. But he sailed to Ayutthaya and was influential in opening it up to the Japanese. So he got here in 1612, which I believe the Portuguese were here in 1611. So he opened up the diplomatic relations between Japan and Siam, which is what Thailand was known for before. So the Japanese appointed him as like the leader of the Japanese settlement in 1621. And he was the highest ranking military guy in this area also. And he was eventually in 1630 a governor of Nakomsi Tamarat, which is down in the south. You see this is a pretty big outfit going upriver. So this is what it looks like here on the Chao Phraya. So we got some guys here fishing away. And a bridge going over, some boats going. Now right across the way, right on the other side over there, you can see that red sign. That is where the Portuguese settlement was at. And then up this way, I believe the English and the Dutch. And there was a group of settlers here from what is Sulawesi Island, which is current Indonesia. But I don't think there's any buildings or anything that's been dedicated to them. But they were pretty big traders in this region also. So they have a little building here with some of the displays. And they talk about the Hoi Tong and some of the other desserts that was invented in this area by one of the women that was Portuguese and half Dutch. Now, the Japanese, in addition to like the samurais fleeing Japan, they also, most of them that came to this area were Catholic because they fled persecution in Japan. Japan had basically like a death sentence for anybody that was Christian. And so they fled Japan to come over to here. So pretty neat. They got some of the weapons and some of the other displays that they found in this area. And so these were some of the images of the Buddha that they found here in Ayutthaya in this settlement. So these were 15th to 18th century roughly, and they're made out of sandstone. So here they have the national instrument of Japan and Go, which I've played this before. It's supposed to be the oldest board game in existence that's still being played. But the koto here has 13 strings, and then it has the bridge up there, and you play it by plucking the strings, and you can move that bridge back and forth to change the tone or the pitch. And it's similar to like some Japanese or some Chinese and Korean and some other countries that use it, like Mongolia. But they have a 17-string version of it also. And here you can watch a movie, and they have some little displays. So we'll see what the movie's about. So the paintings on the wall represent some of the times that, or some of the historical events. So this is a replica of the Thai junket ship, which is similar to the Chinese. They use that for trade, and that's the Nagoya Castle. And this is Nagasaki Harbor over here, and that was the link between Ayutthaya and Japan. And then Japan changed up their policy where they wouldn't allow the Siamese to trade directly with them, but the Portuguese still acted as middlemen. And then this is the church in the Portuguese settlement, St. Domingo, I believe. And then this is a replica of the procession of the Japanese troops in King Oral the Great's army. Okay, so this is the little building. It has the movie in it. Now, they don't let you record the video while the movie is going on, but it basically tells you just what all I've told you already, and you can read most of the information on the little placards. But it's pretty interesting. It's nice to see that they have some of the history still recorded. Okay, so they have the annex building also. So it has some study information in here. So let's see what it has. So if you wanted to come here, you can actually rent a kimono if you wanted to wear a kimono and walk around. It's like 200 baht, so about $6 if you wanted to rent a kimono. And it looks like they have all the famous people, a timeline, kind of a model of what the settlement looked like, and some of the trading route maps. It talks about the area. As the armor, some of the clay pots. This is pretty nice. So the trade that they did was with the furs, ivory, ceramics, some of the spices and wood and all of that. And so here's some of the tea pots. So they use these for the tea ceremony. Rice wine. And some of the Japanese fans. And some more of the Japanese weapons. Another replica of the armor suit of the Japanese soldier. This painting that's on the back wall here is taken from one of the most famous maps of Ayutthaya, and it's actually hanging in the Rijks Museum in Amsterdam. But it shows the way the island city was. It shows the rivers around it, shows the architecture, the brick roads, everything. And it was supposedly so beautiful that they called it the Venice of the East. Just all these massive temples and all that. So this painting was made in 1633. All right, so both of these buildings were quite entertaining. They had movies in each one. So the one dedicated to the Japanese warlord guy that had a movie talking about his life, and it was worth it. And then the annex building had the history of the settlement, and it also talked about all the other various peoples that settled in this area. Ayutthaya, whenever it was at the pinnacle of its prosperity, had 200,000 people living on the island. And the island is separated by 3 rivers, and they built all the temples, they had mosques, they had everything else on it. Around the community, there was the Chinese, I guess numbered about 10,000 Chinese. Then you had the Japanese, Vietnamese, the Mons. You had people from Indonesia, you had the Malay, French, English, you know, you name it, the Dutch, and the Portuguese, who were the most influential of the Europeans. And just quite an amazing area when you think about it. And then when the Burmese sacked it in 1767, all these people fled. And there were some that had already fled, like the English had fled earlier. One of the Thai kings got angry at the British trading company, and they chased him out of Thailand, even though mostly the British had pretty good relations. But there's some more of the settlements that I want to look around. But if you're in this area, I would say come by. It's not really on a normal tourist map, and it's definitely worth 50 baht to come and see the Japanese settlement. So let's go see some of the other stuff that we can see, and what maybe there's not a whole lot. Like the Dutch, I think there's not much you can see, even though that community is just a little bit to the north. Okay, so here we are at the Dutch settlement. All right, so just north of the Japanese village is what remains of the little Dutch settlement. So there's some ships, and it's open from Wednesday to Sunday, and it's open air, so you can just walk around and look at the ships and kind of the old foundation of the settlement, and it's free, so you can just come here and look around. So they talk about the settlement was from 1634 to 1767. 1767 is when the Ayutthaya was sacked by the Burmese the second time. So here's some of the ships, and they got just kind of like a mix match of some stuff. And they got all these ships up on like blocks, and you can just walk around. These look like some of the old Thai ships you'd see on the canals around Bangkok, around the middle of the 20th century. And this is what the museum building looks like. It's kind of like a colonial Dutch building. And they have inside a little coffee shop where you check in. And this land and building and everything was donated by the Dutch, so that people can remember part of their history in Siam. All right, so on the second floor of the little museum building, they talk about who the Dutch were, why they came here, and they have a bunch of information talking about the Dutch East India Company. They have the Dutch flag with the VOC, and that was the name of the company. Replica of the ships. Some of the places where they had settlements. It's kind of interesting, this part here of India. I guess they still have some people that speak Portuguese there. It would be interesting to go and see one time. And Macau, the buildings with all the Portuguese influence, and around Nagasaki in Japan. So there's quite a bit of good information up here. They're talking about the Dutch, that there was actually 1 million people out of a population of all of Holland of 2 million that were employed in seafarer trading, which is an amazing thing. Now, they came to this area in search of like tin and spices, and it was quite a rivalry between the Dutch and the Portuguese and the Chinese, and there was a lot of conflict over, you know, Thailand or Siam using the Chinese, and there was actually a 2-year war, and that was fought over that, and the Siam, they agreed to let the Portuguese be the ones conducting all the trade. The VOC, or the Dutch East India Company, actually lost money trading back to Holland, but what they did is they did intra-Asia trade. So they facilitated trade between, you know, China, Japan, the Philippines, and Indonesia. So that was a large part of their income. And their first settlement was in Ayutthaya in 1608. And then the last settlement ended with the Burmese sacking the city in 1767. And they razed, or they burned this entire settlement to the ground. And the employees, they fled, and they just left a few people behind that were like the local employees. But they traded everything. They traded precious metals. They even shipped elephants. They say 300 elephants a year were sent out to India. So they used some historical documents, and they found where this site was located at, based on the descriptions of the Dutch themselves plus other European traders. And they excavated the ground, and they found the ruins of 3 buildings, and also their drainage pipes, pottery, animal bones, coins, seashells, everything else. And they can actually use this information and decide how the people in the area lived. So this is an example of what they dug up. And they had pottery from China, they had everything. So they could use all this information and get a pretty accurate account of what they normally saw. They have some pretty nice maps also that were key to being able to decide how Ayutthaya looked at its peak. So after the fall of Ayutthaya, the Dutch abandoned this, and the VOC went out of business. It went bankrupt. And the Dutch didn't return back to Siam until about the 1820s. And then they formalized some free trade again in 1855. And it's continued on ever since. There's even been state visits by, you know, the Thai royal family. King Rama IX went to the Netherlands in, I believe, 1960 or so. And then he formalized some more trade agreements with them. So just outside the museum, I guess this isn't part of the museum. This just is like a little yard here that they're restoring a lot of these little boats. They have just various ships from all over in here. So they have some craftsmen that really know wood. You can see kind of right up there. So here is the church that was at the Portuguese settlement. And this church was restored in 1995. So they started restoring it in 1984, and they finished restoring it up in 1995. And right next to the little Portuguese settlement, right here is the Chao Phraya River. So the Portuguese settled in this area, and they came and they set up their own little area here next to Ayutthaya, and they traded. And at the time, Ayutthaya was one of the most wealthy cities in all of Asia. They were open to free trade with anybody. So the Japanese came and settled, the Portuguese, the Dutch, anyone that would come and trade with them. And here's a map. Looks like it's all written in Portuguese. And down here it's all written in Thai, so I can't read it either. And what they've done with this is they've made it into like basically a graveyard, a burial site. So you can see down there the bodies of people that were buried in the floor of the church, which used to be the custom. You go to a lot of the old European churches and they buried people in the floor. So it was the Portuguese that died here, as well as the local Thais that had converted to Christianity. So they have quite a bit of information here talking about the history of this Portuguese settlement. They talk about the trading relations of Ayutthaya with countries like China and India, and they had different groups that was like, they had a port master, they had a left port master and a right port master, and one port master traded with China, another traded with like the Arabs and all of that. And they mainly traded stuff that was like rare, like ivory and silk and like pepper, stuff like that. And Portuguese came here in 1511. So they were the first Westerners to come into Ayutthaya, into this region. And they had a few other ports they set up, like Patani and other ones that they set up around the area. And they were actually here 100 years before the British. So the Portuguese were pretty influential. And whenever they came in, they brought in a lot of their culture. They brought in some of their food, like foie tong is a Portuguese creation that's still popular here in Thailand. So they brought in their food, they brought in their religion, and they built this church and they built others. And this area at one time had 4,000 people that were living in this little community. And it was destroyed by the Burmese and completely burned to the ground. And the Portuguese that were here, they moved to Tonburi. And they were in Tonburi and then around where the current Portuguese embassy is on the Chao Phraya in Bangkok. The Portuguese brought in a lot of their war techniques. They traded weapons and everything to the Thai people, and they trained them. They were mercenaries, and they were pretty important for their military. And they were believed to be mercenaries and influential in a lot of the battles to help the Thais win. And they were defeated, and they stopped being part of the Thai military when the Burmese defeated them and chased them out of Ayutthaya. But there is just a lot of information. It's pretty good stuff. It's pretty enjoyable to read this. And it talks about other communities that were here, the Japanese, the Vietnamese, and the Portuguese, the French, the British, and then their interaction with the king and stuff like that. So it's pretty good. It's really interesting. It's worth 10-15 minutes of your time to come over and take a look at. So this is all that's left of the Portuguese settlement here, other than the church that was reconstructed. Now the Fine Arts Department donated like a little over 7 million Thai baht to the restoration of the church, but that wasn't enough money to fix up all these old buildings. So all you have now is just basically the foundations. And this was at one time a thriving community. Like I said, there was about 4,000 people living here. They had 2 churches in this region, the one that's been restored and then another one. And it was completely demolished by the Burmese. And I believe 1767 is when Burma captured Ayutthaya. And all the people that lived here, the ones that could, they fled to Tonburi and into Bangkok. So So it would have been pretty interesting to see when it was really here. So right across the river from the Portuguese village is the Japanese village. So you got to go a little bit out of the way to get over there. And then this is the Chao Phraya River here. Okay, so if you're in Ayutthaya, you got to come over and get the Nam Tok Mu. And that is the boat noodles. And you'll see that they'll have like a little boat like this, and that tells you that they make the boat noodle. And this is a specialty from this area. And you can get it with the little noodles or the bigger noodles, whatever you want. And it has pork, and then you can get it with the liver. The liver is this right here. And if you don't want the liver, tell them Mayao Tab. And the canal right next to the church. Boat going up it, and there is the front of the canal. You see, looking down the other way from the canal, you see the stupas of a temple over there. Okay, so this is inside the church itself. You have a spiral staircase that goes up to a second level inside there. Got a couple ladies here cleaning, and the pulpit for the priest. You see the different colored tiles on the ceiling up there. Looks like they've added AC, but the old days they had just some fans. This is quite nice inside. Got all the murals of Jesus and everything. And then some of the stained glass windows. And the pews, they're cleaning up underneath them. And this is really pretty. And here's the very front of the church. Over here's some more of the stained glass. It looks really nice. And up on the second level. Don't know if that's where the organ's at or what. And over here, some more of the stained glass. All right, guys, so that finishes up our video. It was pretty fun. Got to see something that I've never seen before, and it's kind of off the beaten path for most tourists. So we got to see the Portuguese settlement, the Japanese settlement, the Dutch settlement, and this old church. We also got to see a little bit of those guys building the boats, which was probably the funnest thing for me. Anyway, hopefully you guys like this video. I like doing stuff like this. It's, you know, it's different, it's part of history, and it's something to do. Anyway, if you like the video, guys, make sure you click like and subscribe to my channel if you're not subscribed already, and share it with your friends, and leave me a comment if you liked part of it. Tell me if you've been to some of these places. Tell me also, and if you want me to do something else, let me know also. I'll go try to make a video of it if I can. And as always, guys, remember, life is a journey, so enjoy.